You should be grateful I even dated you. The words hit harder than a slap. Ivy froze, cheeks burning, as Knox pushed back his chair and stood up in front of his colleagues, his eyes cold, his tone final. Then, without a second glance, he walked away. He left her with the check. And the shame. But this wasn't just a breakup. This was a warning shot, one Ivy wouldn't understand until it was too late. Because Knox wasn't who he said he was. And the secrets he left behind could get someone killed. Stay. You haven't even scratched the surface yet. Ivy Quinn had always believed in control, crisp routines, sharp lines, polished nails, and power heels. At 29, she managed one of Manhattan's most prestigious fashion boutiques, where she made ruthless decisions with a disarming smile and perfect lipstick. Love, to her, was the one place she allowed herself to be soft, vulnerable. And for 3 years, she gave that softness to Knox Wilder. Tall, magnetic, ambitious, dangerous, in the way a storm looks beautiful before it wrecks everything. Knox was a mystery wrapped in tailored suits and confident grins. He claimed to run a boutique marketing firm, often talking about pitch meetings and branding deals, but he was always vague with details. Ivy didn't press. Love, she told herself, required trust. Sit down. His voice cut through her sentence like ice. Her smile faltered. She Saturday. He didn't introduce her. No one asked who she was. They just continued their conversation. Fast-paced, full of inside jokes. Knox barely looked her way. When she tried to speak, he interrupted. When she offered opinions, he smirked. Then came the laughter. Wait, tell them what you do again, Knox said suddenly, turning to her with a too-wide grin. It's adorable. Ivy's throat tightened. I manage a fashion boutique uptown. Right, he cut in. She's basically a glorified cashier with a clipboard. The table roared with laughter. Ivy stared at him, stunned. Was this some cruel joke? Knox, she whispered, what are you doing? He leaned back, sipping his wine with a slow smirk. Just being honest, babe. The room spun. And then, he said it. Loud. Clear. No shame. You should be grateful I even dated you. Silence. The air froze. The laughter died. Ivy couldn't breathe. Knox stood, buttoned his jacket, and glanced at his stunned colleagues. Well, folks, looks like I'm back on the market. Then he walked out. Left her there. With the check. With the stares. With her pride bleeding out between courses of steak tartare and red wine. The cab ride home felt like a dream she couldn't wake up from. Ivy sat stiffly in the back seat, staring blankly out the window as the city lights smeared past like paint bleeding in the rain. Her black silk dress clung to her skin. Her hands trembled in her lap. She didn't cry. Not yet. It wasn't until she stepped into her apartment, dropped her purse on the floor, and sank onto the couch in silence that the tears came, slow, hot, and relentless. Her phone buzzed. Vanessa. Her best friend. The one who never liked Knox. The one who warned her. Ivy hesitated, then hit accept. What the hell happened? Vanessa's voice was sharp, protective, furious. You didn't answer my texts. Are you okay? Ivy swallowed hard. He dumped me. In front of his co-workers. Made a joke out of it. Silence. Then, that son of a bitch. He said. I should be grateful he dated me. Vanessa gasped audibly. No. No, he didn't. Ivy, I swear to God, I will. Don't. Ivy's voice cracked. Just stay on the line. She wiped her face with shaking hands, opened her laptop, needing a distraction, something to hold on to. Her cursor hovered over Knox's name. She clicked. His latest post lit up her screen. Back to the Brotherhood. #single life #freedom feels good. Posted 40 minutes ago. Ivy's heart stopped. There were photos. Knox with his arm around 2 women in a rooftop bar. Laughing. Celebrating. As if she never existed. I'm going to kill him, Vanessa growled. But Ivy just stared. Something was wrong. So wrong. Not just the cruelty. The timing. How could he move on that fast? Unless he'd already planned this. Her inbox chimed. Cody M., subject, you don't know who he really is. Ivy blinked. Who the hell is Cody? She clicked. Hi Ivy. You don't know me, but I work with Knox. Or? I did. I was at dinner tonight. You need to know the truth. He's not who he says he is. Not even close. If you're ready to hear it, reply. But be prepared, it's going to hurt. Cody. Ivy's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Vanessa whispered, what is it? Someone from his work. Says Knox lied. About everything. Told you. The guy's a snake. Ivy hit reply. I want to know everything. The response came within minutes. Knox isn't a marketing executive. He's an administrative assistant. He answers phones. Books meeting rooms. Picks up coffee. He's never pitched anything in his life. All those business trips. They were lies. He took unpaid leave to stay in cheap motels and make his life seem more glamorous than it is. I didn't say anything before because, honestly, we all thought he was harmless. But what he did to you tonight, that was low. You deserve to know. Ivy stared at the screen, heart thudding like a war drum. Suddenly, everything started to fall apart. She opened old texts. Scrolled through the months. Knox's late-night meetings always happened in the same block downtown. She remembered the GPS sharing app they'd once used during a trip. She rechecked the locations. One address repeated often. A rundown apartment building in Hell's Kitchen. Not an office. Not even close. She flipped to her banking app, searched restaurant names. The fancy dinners he'd treated her to. All charged to the same maxed-out credit card. In her name. He'd asked her to co-sign for emergencies. She'd never checked the statements. A cold nausea twisted in her gut. She typed his company's name into Google. His award-winning campaign from last year. Verbatim copy of a blog post from a San Francisco-based agency. Every thread she pulled unraveled more lies. Every memory she thought was real, tainted. Every I love you he whispered, poisoned. It was Vanessa who wouldn't let it go. While Ivy sat numbly on her couch, staring at the shattered remains of a life she thought was real, Vanessa went into full detective mode, laptop open, tabs multiplying, fingers flying across the keyboard like she was chasing a ghost. He lied to you, Ivy, she muttered. But why? Why build an entire fake career? What was he covering up? Ivy didn't answer. She couldn't. She felt like she was floating above her own body, watching someone else's heartbreak play out in real time. Then Vanessa froze. Oh my God. Ivy looked up, slowly. What? I think I found something. On her screen was a financial forum, small, obscure, but full of angry posts and warnings. Do not lend to KW. Scam artist. Owes $200,000. Still missing. Connected to underground lenders. Ivy's stomach dropped. Vanessa clicked deeper, then pulled up a dark web thread filled with blurred images and half-redacted names. One name kept popping up. Knox Wilder. He took out a massive loan, Vanessa said quietly. From some kind of loan shark ring. Underground stuff. Probably illegal. Tried to start a business, something in crypto marketing, but it tanked. How do you know it's him? Ivy whispered. Vanessa zoomed in on a grainy photo. Knox. Standing beside a man with a tattooed face and a gun holster barely hidden under his jacket. Because he's right there. Ivy's breath caught in her throat. It suddenly made sense, the paranoia, the vague answers, the sudden mood swings. The way he was always on the move. The fake success. It had all been a cover. He was running. And now. Maybe not just from creditors, but from people who don't forgive debts. The next morning, Ivy woke up with one thought pounding in her head like a drumbeat. Why didn't he just tell me? Why the lies? The humiliation. The betrayal. She couldn't stop replaying the dinner in her mind. The way he looked at her, cold, empty. Like a stranger. Like someone trying to burn a bridge. And then, it hit her. He wanted her to hate him. He needed her to walk away. She called Vanessa. What if he wasn't just lying to protect himself? Ivy said slowly. What if he was trying to protect me? Vanessa was silent for a beat. You think he pushed you away? On purpose? Think about it. That dinner. That was a performance. He could have ghosted me. But instead, he chose the most humiliating way possible to end it. In public. In front of witnesses. Because if anything happened to him, Vanessa said, connecting the dots, you'd never go looking. Ivy nodded, her voice barely a whisper. He made sure I'd never want to see him again. For the first time in days, her heartbreak shifted into something else. Fear. Regret. And the terrifying realization that the man who tore her heart apart might have done it to save her life. The letter arrived on a Tuesday night. No name. No return address. Just a plain white envelope, slipped through the mail slot like it had fallen from a ghost. Ivy stared at it for a long moment before tearing it open with trembling fingers. Inside, one line, scribbled in rushed handwriting she recognized instantly. Ivy, I'm sorry. I did terrible things to protect you. Please forget me. No signature. But she didn't need one. Her chest tightened. The room spun slightly. She gripped the edge of the counter to stay upright. It wasn't just a goodbye. It was a warning. And suddenly, she understood, Knox wasn't just running, he was hiding. From people who wanted more than money. People who would do anything to find him. Or use her to get to him. She stayed up all night, reading and rereading the note, her brain looping through every memory, every word he'd said that didn't make sense until now. The next morning, a sharp knock on her door jolted her out of sleep. Two men in suits. Badges. Ms. Quinn. Yes? We're with the Financial Crimes Division. May we come in? Her heart slammed into her ribs. Is this about Knox? They exchanged a look. One of them nodded. We're trying to locate Mr. Wilder. He's gone off-grid. Disconnected his phone. No activity on his cards. He hasn't been seen in over a week. He left me, Ivy said, voice flat. In public. In front of his co-workers. The agent gave her a sympathetic look. We're investigating potential fraud connected to a series of shell companies. Knox Wilder's name came up in our financial tracing. Ivy's mouth went dry. Is he in danger? Another look between the agents. This one less sympathetic. We don't know yet. But if he contacts you, you need to tell us immediately. When they left, Ivy stood frozen in her doorway, her mind unraveling. The letter. The debt. The shame. Was he running from the law, or something far worse? Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Cody. Ivy, it's me. Cody. Knox just texted me. He said, they've found me. Something's very wrong. Ivy stared at the message, her blood turning to ice. They? Who were they? She realized, with a creeping dread, that whatever Knox had done, it wasn't over. It was just getting started. 1 week later, the call came. A male body had been discovered in an abandoned alleyway in the Bronx. Gunshot wound to the chest, facial features partially destroyed, no ID, but the height, build, and hair matched Knox's description. The police needed someone to confirm. Ivy stood in the sterile, freezing morgue, her fingers clenched into fists, heart hammering. A sheet was pulled back slowly. She looked. But she couldn't be sure. It could have been him. Or not. The damage was too much. But what broke her wasn't the body. It was the envelope. Delivered to her apartment, just an hour before the call. Inside was one torn scrap of paper, smudged in ink and fingerprints. I always loved you. That was when Ivy broke. 4 days, she didn't speak. Didn't eat. The world blurred around her. Vanessa stayed by her side, but even she didn't know what to say. The police ran a DNA test. It wasn't Knox. And when they finally told her the truth, it was worse than anything she'd imagined. The man who died. A known enforcer for one of the loan sharks. Last seen hunting down a KW days before his death. Now the police believed Knox had killed him. In self-defense, or maybe something darker, they didn't know. But with his criminal connections, forged documents, and string of aliases, one thing was clear. Knox Wilder was now a fugitive. A warrant was issued. And Ivy was left with only silence, and questions that had no answers. 1 year later. Spring. New York bloomed again, and so did Ivy. She had left her boutique job, opened her own studio, and learned how to breathe again. There were days she didn't think of him. Others when the memory came like a riptide, unseen, but impossible to escape. One night, after closing up the shop, she walked home through a quiet street. It was late. The city was hushed. A shadow stepped out from the alley. Her heart stopped. He didn't speak at first. Just looked at her like he hadn't seen the sun in years. Then, in a whisper like a broken prayer, Ivy. She dropped her keys. It was him. Lean. Hollow-cheeked. Eyes darker than she remembered, but undeniably him. Knox. You're alive, she whispered. I had to disappear, he said, stepping closer. They were everywhere. They wanted blood. I had to fight my way out. Her voice cracked. You let me think you were dead. I couldn't risk you getting pulled back in. But I cleared my name. I have proof. Witnesses. Documents. Everything they tried to bury, I found it. She stared at him, her mind a storm. You lied to me. I protected you, he said softly. Even when it meant destroying myself. There was a long, unbearable silence. Then he stepped forward. I came back for you. His words tore through her like lightning. because a part of her still loved him. And another part remembered the pain. Could she trust him again? Could she ever? She didn't know. But one thing was certain. This story wasn't over yet. Love isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it's messy, painful, raw, built on choices made in fear, and sacrifices no one sees. Ivy had learned that the hard way. Knox Wilder wasn't a good man. He lied. He vanished. He broke her heart in front of a crowd like it was nothing. But he did it to protect her. He carried the weight of every secret, every threat, every desperate mistake, so she wouldn't have to. And in the end, he returned not as a savior, but as a man haunted by what he'd done in the name of love. Ivy didn't know if she could forgive him. But she understood him. Because sometimes, people do terrible things for the right reasons. And sometimes, the right reasons still leave scars. Not every liar is a villain. Not every goodbye is betrayal. And maybe, just maybe, real love isn't about never making mistakes. Maybe it's about having the courage to face them. To ask for forgiveness. To fight your way back from the darkness, even if you're the one who created it. The truth. Lies always come with a price. And love has to decide if it's willing to pay.